Sear, our non-stimulant, thermogenic, and recomposition agent. Sear is a super cool product because it's going to help you utilize turning your white adipose tissue, which is for storage of fat, into brown adipose tissue, which is going to help with energy production. So this is great to use for a competition prep or in your weight loss phase. So you can stack it with a stimulant-based thermogenic, or you could also use it in your off-season or muscle building phase to help keep you lean and mean. Sear.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm a little neurotic about my sleep. And we all know in order to feel our best, build muscle, lose body fat, sleep is a big part of it. When I started incorporating cured nightcaps as part of my wind down routine, it truly changed the game in terms of having a good night's quality sleep and waking up feeling refreshed. The thing that makes the nightcap stand out isn't the already properly dosed CBD to help with general aches, discomfort, and mood, but it's the added CBN that takes this product to the next level. CBN supports your body's natural sleep rhythms throughout the night for deep restorative sleep that leaves you feeling ready to take on anything the next day. No grogginess or harsh side effects. I like to take these nightcaps with me when I'm traveling or if I'm experiencing higher stress than normal. Pairing the nightcaps with either Zen or a few drops of one of their CBD oils really hits the spot. Making sure to check out all of Cured's amazing products online. Use the code, all one word, for a discount at checkout.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Pro Physique Code. We got more to review. There's a bikini show every weekend. Lexie, Evan, how you guys doing?
Good. How are you, Matt?
I'm good. I'm excited because I feel like the topics that we're covering, there's a lot of positivity. I got a lot of people came up to me in Orlando. I know, Lexie, you have a little fan base there as well.
Yeah, you know what? It's actually funny that you mentioned that people came up to you because I was going to tell you guys this story. So this is so random. I was walking last night. I was walking home from the store because I can walk to the grocery store from my apartment. And I saw this girl on the sidewalk. She definitely looked like a competitor. I could just tell. And she stopped me and she was like, "Oh my gosh, are you Lexie?" And she was like, she watches my YouTube, but she also listens to us on the podcast. So I thought that was kind of cool. Just a very random encounter. So
It's happening. It's happening. Lexie's getting famous.
oh, no, not quite. I mean, you're what, like 500K plus subscribers now on YouTube?
Yeah, but there's different levels of, like, the fitness world is such a small space that, like,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of people putting out consistent content around the competition world. So, like, there's even people on YouTube that I follow that I've never met, and they have like a couple thousand subscribers, but I like their videos. I like their prep series stuff. So yeah, I always tell competitors, like, that's the best thing you can do is document your journey, make it a personal document, and then you never know who it's going to impact positively. That's literally how I started. My first videos were like prep videos, posing videos of me, and they were terrible, but they're still there. And so I'm always grateful because it kind of started things. So you're killing it. So good job. And then we all got to hang out this weekend.
We did.
Yeah, power.
A little preview. So anybody that's going to the Texas Pro, I'm going to say it's August 10th. That's probably wrong, but or thereabouts.
I think you're right.
We're going to be doing a seminar on Sunday, the day after the Texas Pro at Hidden Gym. Details to come out, but if you guys want to come, we'll probably talk a little bit, some short presentations, and then we're going to do some hands-on stuff with like posing and training, or actually whatever you need. It's going to be around the competitor lifestyle. So yeah. People now, someone's going to ask me like, when are you guys coming to North Dakota? Right? Listen, we don't get to do these things often. Get your butt to Dallas. It's the first year that Texas Pro is having a full-on kind of fitness expo experience. Freddie Naidu is going big with this one. Last year it was a huge show, and I think they're just leaning into it even more this year with more vendors. We're going to have a booth. So yeah, and Freddie just puts on an amazing event, and I'm hoping Andrew Jacked comes back because I love seeing that guy in person, man. What a beast.
I know he's doing a Texas show. I don't know which one.
That's got to be it. I think he's won it both years. He's won it 2 years in a row.
I know he just started prep.
Just started prep for August, but yeah, that guy stays ready. He's not like
That's what
don't
Chris Aceto
rebound.
said on the podcast the other day, at least. That
Did
he had
Is
just
Chris
started prep,
Aceto
yeah.
his coach?
Yeah.
Okay.
There he was sitting right next to us at Texas last
That's
year.
right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's right. He sat right next to us. That's cool.
Yep.
Yeah, so let's talk today. We've got a bunch of Q&A stuff, right? We're gonna discuss some things from nutrition, peaking. I got some interesting questions about prep, so I think a lot of it will be geared towards that. But we'll talk quickly about the Girl Power, the only United States based pro show. There was one in China, but I wasn't familiar with any of their names, so I'm not even going to attempt to review that. But we were all there in person looking at Girl Power. So Lexie, why don't you kick it off? What was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, I think going into the show, I think we kind of all assumed Ashley Kay was gonna be her show to win, unless she showed off, which I do know her feedback. She obviously ended up winning the show. I know her feedback was to get a little bit leaner, and I could see that. But after looking at the stage pictures and furthermore looking at like the first call out lineup pictures of all of them next to each other, I thought it was pretty apparent that I thought it was really close between her and Marie Eve. Honestly, I could have seen it going both ways. Just from the pictures alone, they both had their glutes were just lots of depth, very 3D. You could just tell the difference between like their glutes compared to the rest of the lineup. And I just both thought they looked very, very similar. I kind of thought it could have been either of their shows, but when you're dealing with somebody like Ashley Kay, she's usually going to be that kind of that front runner. So yeah, but I thought it was a great show. Definitely a lot more. I thought there was I think there were a lot more competitors at this show, or at least a lot more like former Olympians at this show compared to the Clash last month.
Yeah, how about you, Evan? What was your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, fairly similar. I think it kind of follows the trend that earlier in the year, I think they sometimes can lean a little bit softer on the judging sometimes. Yeah, I think Ashley looked great. She always looks great. Like she never misses, right? I think Eve Marie looked really good. I think she nailed it. I think that, I probably prefer that slightly more conditioned look personally with it. But look, Ashley is Ashley, right? Unless she is going to be off, she's going to be the front runner. To just she has the structure, she has it all. She's been there. I mean, she's the winningest pro for a reason.
Yeah, I think
so.
When they define the criteria for the division and you have her third at the Olympia, to beat that, you've got to overcome a lot of balance, a lot of muscle, a lot of, so even though I don't think anyone would say she was at her all-time best, she was good. And to be fair, she actually got better at finals. She was a little bit sharper, a little bit tighter. I thought Marie was winning. When I was like naked eye test, I kept looking at Marie. Glutes were fuller and tighter. Core was fantastic. Shoulders were full. So, I thought it could go either way. And I feel like they were probably looking at finals. And I thought at finals, Ashley took a pretty big step forward in as far as how she looked. The surprise, I don't say the surprise for me was Chantel moved up from 7th at Wasatch into that top 4.
Yeah.
Or did she get top 5 or 4? I forget where she ended. I think she ended up in 4th.
Third. She got third
Oh, she
at
was
this show.
third. Gosh. Okay. So that's my bad. Oh, Allison was in 4th. They posted a picture. I think the girls had left the stage and come back on stage and they were out of order because Yulia was inside. So anyway, so Yulia was, I think, 5th at this show.
Maya was 5th Maya was 5th and Yulia was 6th, I believe.
Okay. So either way, it was, and all the names we've said so far are former Olympians, like you said, Lexie. So the first clash, I think there was one competitor who had been to the Olympia, and that was Yulia. But the two competitors, and Marie Eve has been before too. So, but the competitor that won has never been, Allie. So, and these are some fun lineups. I think that we're going to see a lot of this going forward because obviously Marie still has to get qualified. And then, Chantel's just, she went from 7th to 3rd in 1 week. So, she's going to want to be, hitting some of these shows in the near future. So lots of exciting lineups to come. But yeah, I think it was Ashley's show to win. She won it. And I ended up going on, the website to look at the before and after pictures after you told me, Lexie. And I was kind of blown away. Now what's cool about the pictures from this show is literally 4 weeks ago, it was the same stage, same lighting, same people, right? So if you go look at Marie 4 weeks ago, go to NPC News Online and look at the difference. It looks like she added 4 pounds of muscle and got leaner.
It does. Like her glutes, like you can tell last month at Clash, the glutes just looked a little like, I don't know. I don't want to say
I
soft,
looked at the
but
glutes, I
Muddy.
looked at the
Like muddy.
quads, the quads, the delts, the skin just looked better, the tan was better. Like she just, yeah, she looked like an Olympian there, you know. And obviously, if Ashley wasn't there, she's going to the Olympia, and I have no doubt she will qualify this year. She's already
I
done
agree.
3 shows this year, so I'm sure she's gonna cruise into another one in the near future.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see if Ashley Kay is going to be at Pittsburgh because
Yeah.
I mean she won this past show, but you know when you put her next to, you know, like an Amy or you know Brittany or you know you know some of those types of people, it'll be interesting to see you know how she compares.
The Pittsburgh lineup, I've heard some names being thrown around, so I cannot wait for that list to come out because I have a suspicion Ashley will not be there. I think she's going to do New York instead, but we'll see. You never know until that list comes out, and that's why I love that list now because it's like comes out, that's what it is. It's a cool.
Yep.
So yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's probably enough about girl power. I don't think there's a lot of you know, I do want to shout out Shanika, who went from finishing outside the top 16 in Wasatch to making the top 10. For those that aren't aware, in Pro Bikini, only the top 10 get to do their routines at finals. So, you know, and the feedback from Shanika, Sandy loved her. Balance, conditioning, everything was perfect. So, you know, she's just on the smaller side on this pro circuit. So we're going to, you know, fine tune a little bit, maybe do 1 or 2 more shows. But I was really happy that she's taking strides and moving forward. That's really what you want as a competitor, right? Get better each time out. So,
Yeah,
all
she
right,
looked
well,
awesome.
how did you guys do question wise? Because I didn't get any. Like I got a few initially, and then I've gotten quite a bit more the last like few hours.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I got a fair amount of them. I mean, I put mine to be based around training and prep. So I got most
Kick
of
us
the
off,
questions
Evan.
based
Why
on
don't you
that.
give us a good one?
Oh, let me go through here. All
Because
right,
I got
here's
some
just a
on
good one.
prep. I got some on like electrolytes. I got a whole array.
Here's a
Okay.
good one. How important is it to keep the mind muscle connection while trying to go up in weight? So you're trying to increase load. How important is the mind muscle connection when you're trying to increase load?
I mean, I'll give my 2 cents. I think this is a great one for you to tackle, Evan. But I think when you're doing isolation movements, absolutely it's critical. When you're doing compounds, I'm not so caught up on my squat on feeling my glutes. They're going to get worked, right? So when it's a compound movement, I focus on power performance and I'll put my body in a position to use the muscles I want. But if I'm doing something specific like a side lateral, I sure as shit want to feel my my medial delts and not my traps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think too, like something I use as a reference is with the compound lifts. Like I'll use a hip thrust, for example. If I feel it, if I don't feel it in my glutes and I feel it like in my quads, which I don't want to feel it in, that's when I'll usually use that as kind of a generic, okay, I need to taper down the weight so I, you know, don't feel this in my quads anymore. And same with like shoulder, like lateral raises. If I'm, you know I'm going too heavy, if I'm feeling it all in my traps as opposed to my delts. But you kind of nailed it, Paul. I think with more of the compound lifts, if you're not necessarily feeling it a ton in that said muscle, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's a lot more important to feel that mind muscle connection when you are doing more of those isolation movements.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with all that. I think compound movements are called compound movements for a reason because they work a variety of muscles at the same time with it. It's not an isolation, not trying to target one specific thing. But with that being said, typically with the compound movement, let's take like bench press, for example. You're trying to work your chest in a bench press. It's going to work your shoulders, it's going to work your triceps, but chest is the main goal of it. But like, so you took the words out of my mouth when you're talking about like the hip thrust. I was going to use that as an example. More so on those type of movements, it's where you don't want to feel it. If you're feeling it a lot in your quads on the hip thrust, you probably need to do some adjusting on where your foot placement is, maybe even the equipment you're using to do it, to be able to make sure that you're feeling it in your glutes. Because if you know you're feeling it in your quads, your glutes are definitely not getting the majority of the work with it. So yeah, all in all, I think being able to feel that muscle is important. And it also depends on how advanced someone is in their training and kind of what their split looks like. But, you know, when you get into more things like squats and compound movements with it, yeah, I mean, it's you're going to feel it in a lot of areas, you know, with that.
Yeah, and I'll say this, like when I was younger, when, you know, me and my friends were bench pressing, you know, obviously I think we all wanted to build our chest, but we all had terrible form and we all just grew our, you know, anterior delts.
Yep.
And so, you know, looking back, I wish I would have just tucked my elbows a little bit and grown my chest a little more. But the nice thing was when I did learn the form, all of a sudden the chest started growing. So, you know, there's errors to be made, but you know, the term mind muscle connection, I've also seen some trainers and some people on the gram where I'm like, you can over isolate and focus on time under tension to the point where you're missing out on progress, because the benefit of a compound movement is that you can overload a smaller muscle that's maybe not going to be able to handle that much of a load. And so there's benefits to all these movements. When people are like, well, what do you prefer, compounds or isolation? I'm like, well, all of it. They all have their place. If you're a competitor that's, you know, a little small, don't worry about isolating your rear delts. Just grow your body, right? So, you know, just put tissue on and then you can refine it. So that's kind of, you know, first good couple of years of your training should be less focused on like isolation movements and more focused on compounds for the general, you know, general population.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right, Lexi, what you got for us?
Okay. This is kind of an interesting one. Tips for core control on stage. What do you guys tell your ladies or do you guys have anything in particular that you tell your ladies to focus on when it comes to like their core control on stage?
Yeah. Look, a lot of females have a hard time contracting their abs and their core, and really flexing their abs. Most of them could do a pretty good vacuum though, and be able to control it that way. A cue that I like to give, especially on stage, to be able to keep the stomach kind of in and tight, and is imagine you're kind of doing a vacuum, but doing it underneath your belly button. So don't vacuum like up top, but feel like you're trying to pull in from like underneath your belly button a little bit, which actually will help you kind of raise your chest up a little bit and improve your posture with that. Because the problem is if you're trying to just keep your core tight, a lot of times it can make you crunch down as well. So if you're just kind of vacuuming in, not a full vacuum, but just controlling your core a little bit under your belly button and trying to pull that more towards your spine and your spine towards your belly button just a little bit, that really brings it in.
Yeah, I think
I like that.
I like to focus on just having them train, you know, their core a couple times per week. I find that's going to do most of the work. Some people like vacuums, some people never do them. Some people like to wear a waist trainer, some people never wear them. So I think it's about, you know, the biggest thing is getting body fat off. When your body fat is gone, it's a lot easier to feel what's going on. And then it's also repetitions of posing. So yeah, when you're on stage, you are standing upright, you are tensing lightly the core to engage it. But that's repetitions and practice. You just do it to the point where you're not even thinking about doing it, right? It's just how you handle it. But I don't have a specific, you know, I send core training programs to my athletes, but I don't necessarily send like a core control, you know.
Yeah. Core
Yeah,
control
I
can be hard
think,
for a lot of people if they, especially if they have to carb up a good bit, and they
yeah,
have food in their stomach. You know, obviously the goal is to do that the night before, so you shouldn't have a lot of food in your stomach. But you know, in a lot of girls too, I find that the leaner they get, the harder they feel like it's to control their stomach at times, and they feel like they almost don't want to eat because it feels like it distends their stomach every 2 seconds.
I mean, if you're
yeah,
eating something that causes that, I would say you're probably eating something poorly, because, you know,
Yeah.
most of my athletes are 300-400 carbs the day before the show. Sometimes I'll add a burger and that gets the digestion going.
Mhm.
But you got to be really sure about the food sources and have test that before you can do
Yeah.
that. So yeah.
yeah.
I
I
do think
think
it's as well. It's more of a mental thing with girls, and I always tell them like, hey, how does it feel when you wake up fast in the morning? Do you feel distended and bloated then? No, then you're good. Like, don't judge that at the end of the day after eating 100 grams
Well,
of
well, I
carbs.
Lexi,
think
you
one
competed a couple times last year. Like, what is your thoughts around your core near stage day?
Yeah. Honestly, I think that when it comes down to me personally, like when I get stage lean, you're right, Paul. Once you just get leaner, it seems like for me at least, I think it's just easier to control your core because you have less there to control, right? But generally, what I think something that's very overlooked when it comes to core control is just practicing your posing endurance, like not just practicing your routine, how you're going to perform it on stage, but actually practicing holding your front pose for like increments of 20 to 30 seconds and then resting. And then, doing that over again and seeing how much you can limit that movement with the core. Because that's going to be really important for comparisons. And then also very important if you are brought back on the stage and you're on the side. So I think that is really important to like practice that posing endurance and just holding your front pose. I think vacuums, if you know how to like perform them properly, can be very helpful. I know lots of girls that like doing like vacuums. I also think something that it can help some people, especially like I got asked this question not too long ago, specifically from a master's lady about core control. I think a little bit of like pelvic floor strengthening work can help a little bit too. But I would say I think the thing that's overlooked the most is just practicing holding your front pose and practicing that endurance and like watching yourself in the mirror or recording yourself and just making sure that you limit movement as much as possible, because I think a lot of people forget to do that, and then come stage day when you're in that comparison lineup and you're having to hold your front pose for a long period of time, that's when you're like, oh crap, I should have practiced holding my poses.
And a lot of people forget to pose even when they're not in their front pose or back pose. So, you'll notice the girls they'll start moving the competitors around in a call out, and some of the girls will actually just relax their abs and relax their core, or they'll be on the diagonal relaxed, and they won't actually, hit their pose properly till they're on the line. The moment your heels hit the stage, those judges' eyeballs could be anywhere. There's times where they're not impressed with the call outs on the stage and they're looking over to the side. Right. And so, especially when we're talking about like the higher up you go, national and pro level shows, they will notice when you are relaxing your core, and that will be your feedback after the show. Oh, well, when you weren't on stage, we noticed your stomach was a little distended. So like, that is a perfect way to put it, Lexie.
Yeah, I see it a lot. That's a great point, Paul, with like comparisons when they're moving girls around. I feel like I see it all the time. Like girls step in front, they walk to the side, and they kind of just let their core go for a sec. And it's not a great look. I mean, the judges usually are going to see that. So yeah, gotta be careful.
All right. So I actually got a bunch. I got about 12 questions here. I got one that we can knock out real quick. Average weight of a 5'2" bikini competitor on stage. Lexie, how tall are you? 5'3", 5'4"?
It really depends on the show. I was 5'2" last year in Texas, and then I was 5'3" at the next show. I think I'm like right in between. I'm like 5'2" and a half.
Okay. And you want to tell them?
Yeah, I am usually around like last time I was on stage, like 10, I think stage day I was like 103.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I'd say
I'm on the low side, I feel like, of weight. And I think part of it is just overall muscle, but I feel like I'm also very small boned. So I think, like, I don't know about you guys, for 5'2", I would say it could be anywhere like the range from, I don't know, 100 to up to like 110, 112. I think it just depends on.
Were you in the same class at Tampa as Ashton, my client Ashton? Were you guys in the same class?
Yes, but that was the weird thing. Tampa was weird because I was measured the class below her the night before. And then the day of the show, they put me in her class. I remember that was very odd, but yeah, so I was in her class, but I was measured to be the class below that.
Yeah, she was 117. I remember she was 117. So like, there you go. There's a big range. I would say the average is probably 110. So I'd say Lexie's slightly below that. I would say Daraja, who's 5'2", is 117, 118 on the Olympia stage. So that's elite level. And then, you've got a range in there. So somewhere in that range really comes a lot down to structure, muscle insertions, how conditioned you actually are. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, like, I know we all hear this all the time, but it is an important reminder. It doesn't matter what you weigh on stage. Like, it just comes down to the look, right? But I think, I get that question a lot. Like, I think some people like to know the range that maybe they should strive or that they're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, believe me, I had a girl turn pro at USA's 2 years ago in class B that was 101 pounds. She turned pro, won the class, natural bodybuilder, but conditioning was over the moon, very full, crazy structure. It was Gabby. And so like, like she can get away with being a little lighter than some girls who have to be a little heavier to overcome their structure flaws, right? So yeah, that's all right. So let's ask a real one. That was like a softball toss. When to incorporate refeeds. So this is something that, so let's define what a refeed is. A refeed is a day where we restore glycogen through increasing carbohydrates. Sometimes we can drop the other macros. Sometimes I keep them the same, but the refeed is basically when you're needing more carbohydrates. So when do I incorporate refeeds? I've noticed over time that it starts to get incorporated when their carbohydrates get about the same as their body weight, right? So if they're about 130 pounds and I'm getting their carbs down to about 130 a day, that's when I might have a day where they're getting 190 to 200 carbs. But I will never incorporate a refeed if they're not ever getting flat and if they're still dropping body fat. It's usually something I add once we got to get a little aggressive with calories and carbohydrates. So that's my spiel.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. It's when it's needed. People will go and say, I want a whole prep without a refeed. It's like, well, you didn't need a refeed the whole time. I mean, sometimes you don't. That's a rare occurrence with it, but the more aggressive you have to get, the more refeeds are probably going to be needed.
Yeah, the more aggressive you get, the deeper into prep or deeper into a fat loss phase. Because I think we've talked about it on here before, but I don't know about you guys, but I very rarely, if ever, start a prep with a refeed built into the routine. It's usually not happening until like that second half of a prep. And I think biofeedback is a big part of that too, as far as not only like, are you still getting pumps in the gym? But also how are you recovering from the gym? How is your digestion? Just how are you feeling overall? I think that feeds into, when to bring in a refeed as well.
And for all the newer competitors out there, if you think refeeds are fun, they may be in the moment. But the next following days, they typically are not, because the hunger signals go up a considerable amount. At least
I
for
have
me,
some
they
that
do.
complain about the high carb days because on those days they're hungrier and they don't like them for that. But they serve a purpose. And I'll say this, the leaner you are, the more frequent refeeds become and the better they are for you. And then once you're stage lean, all days become refeed days. Most of my competitors, if they've done 2 or 3 shows, our carbs are up to our refeed numbers on a daily basis. It's like this metabolic, Dr. Joe calls it metabolic building. But there is a sweet spot in prep where you get all the body fat off, you bring the food back up, and you just hang out there.
Mhm.
Now, that sounds exciting. You still feel run down and tired, even though you're eating more. It does make it more manageable. Your workouts can be better, but body fat being low still means you're going to suffer a little.
Yeah.
I feel like your body gets used to it. Your mind gets used to it a little bit, to where it doesn't feel quite as bad with it than it does initially. And then that's kind of the whole dieting process with that. You'll go through stages to where you're like, I don't know if I could do this. This is really hard. And then a day and a half later, you'd be like, oh, this is fine. How did I ever complain about this? Everything's great.
Yeah.
And then you just
And
hang
then-
out there and it's
And
fine.
then you
drop the
worry,
food
you're
again
like,
for
wait,
you.
I don't feel like crap. Something's wrong.
Yeah. Then you start
Yeah.
worrying, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know sometimes
It's always
at
going to
the
be hard,
end-
guys.
Yeah, at the end of prep, I think sometimes, not that as coaches we put them like for competitor, not that we put refeeds in for this reason, but I think as a competitor, sometimes refeeds can just be really great from a psychological standpoint too. Like I know it's more of an incentive. Like if I know I have a refeed at the end of the week, it just like, it's like light at the end of the tunnel, right? Like, okay, get through these next 5 low carb days and then I get a refeed. So sometimes that's nice, deeper into prep as a competitor too.
Well, as a man, the hard part for us is seeing the scale number go down, seeing your extra larges hang on your body. And so the closer I get to stage, the refeed for me is the psychological benefit is seeing my physique come to life, seeing the striations come back, the vascularity come back. Because there are days in prep where the carbs are low, the cardio is high, the body fat's low. You actually just kind of look like a ghost of yourself. And then I swear, 2 high carb days and you're like, okay, I'm going to win Mr. Universe. It's like this, and it really helps. So there's multiple benefits to refeeds, not just digestion hormones, the reprieve at the end of the week of more calories, if you will. But for me, it's just really exciting to see the body, muscle is so glycogen based that it just, if you don't have any, you just look terrible. So,
Yeah.
compared. So, yeah.
And that's hard for a lot of people too during the dieting process too. I mean, I always call it like the skinny fat stage, to where it's
Yeah.
you're flat,
That middle phase.
it's horrible, right? You don't look good. You get discouraged. That's where a lot of people can fall off because you're like, this doesn't feel right. I'm regressing. But it's where you're not lean, but you're also flat because you don't have the glycogen, so you're not full. And
Yep.
it's just this horrible place you're sitting at feeling.
I call that the doldrums of prep. It's when you're like 8 weeks out, 9 weeks out, you've lost 7, 8, 10 pounds, but you're not lean. You're not, and it's like, you're just, yeah, you nailed it. There's definitely that phase of prep. And then you come out the other side and you feel good every day till you get to the end. Yeah. All right. That was my
It's a roller
question. Who's
coaster.
got one? Who's got the next one?
I
Right,
do.
Evan, you question?
Yeah. This is a good one on training. Is it ever okay to cheat the last few reps of going to true failure?
Well, I mean, that's based on your program design. I don't think anyone should be going to true failure every rep, every set of every workout. That's a recipe for disaster.
That would be bad.
If
Yeah.
if the workout is designed around going to failure, like this is your, for example, like the Dorian Yates or the Mike Menser HIIT protocol, then yeah, you're going to miss the benefit of that shorter form of a workout. But I've never prescribed a workout where you go to failure every set of every, so.
No, the question was, is it okay to cheat the last few reps when you're trying to go to failure?
Oh, like the old Arnold Schwarzenegger, like, I think that's in the Arnold encyclopedia.
Just get the weight up. Yeah.
Yeah. So like with the barbell curl, like leaning back a little bit.
Mhm.
Listen, I think that's an intensity technique. As long as you're not getting hurt and you're overloading the muscle, it's almost like doing a drop set, but without dropping the weight. Right. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think there's a time and a place for that.
I agree. I think it really comes down to the movement, because if you're cheating a rep and it's like causing strain on your body in an area that could potentially cause an injury, like no, don't cheat the rep. But I think it just comes down to the movement. If you can cheat the last couple reps to failure without potentially getting hurt, I don't see why it would be an issue.
Personally, I would rather drop the weight and keep the form, or do partial reps or something like that, rather than actually cheating the full rep with it. And you're talking about like even doing something like bicep curls, right? Like let's say barbell curls or something like that. And people cheat that, they rock with, they're lean with it. If you're going pretty heavy with that and you are leaning with it, that can lead to injuries for sure.
Yeah. But you can
it's just
also
about being smart.
you can start the rep with a little momentum, you can like,
Yeah, you can
momentum
control
up.
it.
I'll tell you this. I'm with you, Evan. At this point, I ain't doing no cheat reps, like, because it ain't worth the risk, but I've done plenty of them. And I would probably say stay away from it on compounds. You don't want to be cat back in a deadlift.
And be careful with those things too, especially on like lateral raises. If it's a competitor and you had naturally have bigger traps, right? That's not necessarily the best thing when it comes to bikini.
Yeah.
Then no, you do not want to force those reps because your traps are going to take over unless you are very
cheating
good.
reps is a pretty advanced technique. You've got to know your body well. You've got to know your biomechanics well. I would never intentionally put cheat reps in a program, but listen, I think most of us are going to self-experiment on what works and doesn't work. So yeah, I mean, you can try some things out, and yeah, I've definitely done a few cheat reps in my day.
The biggest thing with all of this is you can give people advice, but they got to learn on their own. And it's one of those things that people do cheat reps all day long until they one day get a little hurt from doing it. I remember I was doing the combine after I played at Georgia. I was doing the NFL combines, and I wanted to get the bench press. I can't remember what the reps I was trying to get at. And oh boy, I cheated those up so hard trying to, because it didn't matter at that point. It was just all about reps.
They'll let you bounce it too, won't they? You just got to touch and go, right?
Ours didn't. Not our
Okay.
guy didn't. No, he didn't count a few of those reps I tried with that, unfortunately. But I remember pressing so hard with that I messed my front delts up so bad I could do a push up for like 6 or 7 months after that, because I was just doing everything I could to try to get that weight up. So you're going to learn one way or another, and you can't save people from mistakes. I think just hopefully the mistakes that you make are not overly debilitating, and that's how you learn. That's how you learn. Try different things, guys. There's no right or wrong way to do things. As long as you don't get hurt with it, you're going to learn throughout this process.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Is that you, Lexie?
Yes. Okay. So this will probably be a quick one. What is the lowest you would take somebody's fat and for how long? So I'm assuming like in a prep is what they mean.
You guys go.
So I think where I start to be careful is like around, like I really don't like to have to drop below that 40 gram of fat range. But that's not to say the last maybe couple of weeks of prep, like if we really need to cruise, I may bring it down to 35 grams of fat, or maybe at the very lowest 30, but that's like talking for maybe a few days at a time, followed by a refeed. And that's very temporary. Like, so usually around that 40 grams of fat, if we're having to get below that, that's where I kind of start to bring in more frequent refeeds and just watch things a little bit more diligently.
Yeah, I think it also depends on the size of the competitor with it and the male or female. Like if it's a girl that's 5 foot, 100 pounds, the food can be lower than a girl that's 5'10", 140 pounds. I mean, it's 40 pounds of difference on somebody. Their food is going to be lower on things. I don't like to put people under less than 35 grams of fat with guys. If they're on TRT or things like that, you can for sure do that for small periods of time, as long as it doesn't mess their digestion up. You can, because you don't rely on the fats for the hormone function. So you can push that if you need to. But a lot of times, case in point right here, if you push it too low, too long, your digestion will get messed up from that. I look at fats in relationship to digestion. If digestion is good and they're feeling okay, at least mentally with it, then I kind of gauge the fats based off that. But if digestion
Yeah.
starts slowing, the first thing I do is pull fats up.
Yeah, you brought up a good point. The natural athlete has to keep fats higher because that is going to be benefiting their entire hormone profile. So if you pull out fats too low, you can compromise that. You guys, I think we all have said this many times, 40 grams is the low end. Try 45 or 50 for a man, 35 or 40 for a female. Will I go below that? If it's a situation where, you know what, we're going to kind of dig a hole for a couple days, 2, 3, 4 days at a time, that's about the max I'll go below that 35. But even then it's still like 25 grams. I've seen people on 10 grams of fat for periods of time, and you just start to see a whole host of issues. And not worth it in my mind, not worth it. So yeah, I think if you have someone, or you're in a position where your fats are that low, you can start to look for trouble signs. For men, women, if they're on hormone therapy, they can get away with it because they're not using as much fat, to get that response from their own bodies. But yeah, those are pretty clear numbers for me. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think, we talk so much about fats being important for hormones and digestion, which that's definitely true. But they're also just really important in general for, your body to absorb the minerals and the nutrients from your foods, because a lot of vitamins are going to be fat soluble. So if you don't have enough fat present in your diet, you're not going to probably reap the benefits of your food.
Yep. And also food variety. The nice thing about keeping your fats at 40 or 45, you can actually have a few different options when it comes to your protein sources, because usually it starts to get real limiting when you're getting those. I've had a couple girls, I've had consults with them. They were on a fish and shrimp only diet. That's it.
Mhm.
4 meals of fish or shrimp. I
And look,
can't tell you. Oof.
I the food, and I'll kind of get off my high horse with this, but the food situation here in the United States is so horrible when it comes to like the quality of food that you can get. I am a big fan of getting the leanest meat that you can get and then adding good fats on top of that, because most foods you're going to get, unless they're pasture raised, the fats you're getting from those are not good. Like there's a massive difference between getting some farm raised salmon and some wild caught salmon. It is not the same thing at all. Some of those fats are extremely beneficial on the wild caught. They are not in the farm raised with that. I'd much rather have someone have a leaner protein source and add fats, either through like a nut butter or nuts or olive oil or avocado or eggs or pasture raised eggs, something like that. So they're getting the good benefits, which is the whole benefit of the fats, is you want the good fats to benefit your hormones. You just don't want fat to be fat, right? You want it to be good fats that benefit you. So I think food sourcing for that, especially towards the end of prep, if you're on a budget, totally understand that. But towards the end of prep, and if you're a higher level athlete, it's worth investing in that towards the end. I think it will
not
improve your
getting
look.
your fat from Crisco.
Yeah, probably wouldn't recommend necessarily that, or
Yeah.
or chicken thighs is probably not the best route to go.
I've always had this like mental stigma. It's just I always just buy like the lean meats because I like adding fats to them. I
Mhm.
hate this. Whenever I see like at the store like 85-15 beef, I'm just like, I think of where else I could get that fat from. And I feel like too, like non-competitors, like people just in general, Gen Pop people, like a lot of times they just buy the fatty types of meats without even realizing it. And then, that's a really easy substitution they can make if they're trying to drop weight. But yeah, I've always been somebody who I like to add my fats to my meat. I hate getting my fat from my meat.
My first,
Yeah.
my first time I ever dieted, I kept eating hamburger helper, but I got the lean ground beef. Men just drop weight so easy. Like I literally just stopped eating Snickers. Like, it's just.
Yeah,
I got a good question, and it's something that's a topic that's come up lately because I'm writing peak week plans. So when I send out the questionnaire for peak week, I get a response sometimes of how much water someone's drinking, and I'm like, whoa. So how much water does a competitor really need? And I think maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but I think females especially way over consume water on a daily basis. I have competitors that are regularly over 200 ounces of water a day, 220, a gallon of water is about 130 ounces. So if you're on 2 gallons, that's 260 ounces of water. That is your body working overtime to excrete that, depleting your electrolytes, right? So unless you live in the Sahara Desert, I think, my baseline is about 100 ounces of water, and then you're going to have your coffee, your pre-workout, whatever. But that to me is about my baseline. You can go up and down from there a little bit. I have some on as few as 80 ounces, some as high as, but if someone's on 200 ounces of water, I'm like, we need to bring that down. We need to down regulate that excretion process. So I don't know if you guys have input on that.
Yeah, if you're that high, your sodium has to be legitimately through the roof, like through the roof with that. If you're drinking that much water, you will deplete your body of sodium. People want to know, like, how does my weight spike up 3 pounds if I drink a bunch of water? It's like, well, you threw off your sodium imbalance with that. That's what it was. I think an ounce per pound of body weight is kind of a good measure for most people. And I took that as form of liquids too. So when I asked the question, I was like, okay, what are your liquids? And break those down for me, like on a normal basis, like how much of it is actual water and how much of it is like an energy drink or your 20-ounce coffee or whatever else you have on top of that. And then about an ounce per your body weight, I think you're pretty well covered all the way around, especially like in a prep situation, right? And it's also one of those things too. It's someone's not necessarily following that ideal and their water is lower, I don't increase it going into peak week either. I'm like, we need to keep it consistent on what you've been doing here. Same thing with sodium too. I'm like, let's get our sodium up. And I've got to where I start asking that like a month and a half out from shows now. So we can start working on that and at least get a good basis. So I can be like, okay, no, we need to get that sodium up consistently. Or we need to get that water down a little bit or water up. Because everyone just assumes I need to drink more water. I can't tell you, it's probably every third check-in I get, I need to drink more water. Well, how much water are you drinking in the first place?
Yep.
Yeah, I think my philosophy behind that's interesting, Paul, that you said that you've had a lot of questionnaires recently, but girls reporting that they're eating or not eating, drinking over 200 ounces of water. My philosophy behind that is that they're counting like all of their fluid towards the water. So not just plain water, but like sparkling beverages or whatever those, those drinks that they're consuming. So I think it's really I think it's really easy when you're deep into prep to sometimes like, a sparkling water or a diet soda, that doesn't have caffeine in it. Like those could be our saving grace, because it just kind of it helps to hold you over between meals. And so like, I think I'm definitely one of those people that has to sometimes, I guess, watch my fluid intake at the end of prep because, if you're hungry and you just like, you're bored, like your food focus, sometimes just sipping on something can kind of help to kill that void. So I feel like that's probably what it comes down to and why maybe you're seeing some high numbers.
Agree. And I'm not saying I'm not immune to it too at the end of prep. I call it like an oral fixation at the end of prep. I almost always have to have something going on. Like I'll notice like, I just like to go get a coffee because I'm taking a break. I'm getting a coffee. Like, so yeah, you can definitely start to see those fluid numbers creep up. But that's why in peak week, I say, let's keep it consistent because you don't want too many variables. You don't want to be like, moving water in different ways. And then all of a sudden you have to account for that. So
one thing I did want to bring up too with the carbonated waters, I think that's a great hack. That's something I've used forever with that is drinking like either the Waterloos or LaCroix or something like that. And having that to quench the thirst because the carbohydrate or the carbonation is extremely helpful. one thing that actually, shout out to Andrew Barry, I heard him say this one time, and it hit home with me, is I was drinking a lot of those, and I realized like my vision was a little bit blurry, and I felt like I had a little bit of heartburn, and I heard him mention that, and I pulled both of those back down a little bit, and it fixed both of those things. So crazy enough as that is, if you start kind of experiencing a little bit of that and you're drinking a ton of carbonated beverages, then consider backing it down. I was drinking a lot though. I mean, I was drinking probably 12 cans a day of carbonated water at that point. So
Wow.
it was a lot.
Oh my gosh,
Impressive.
Evan.
Most of my water
Wow.
intake. Man, not 12, more
Yeah.
like, well, I wake up in the middle of the night thirsty, and I
Yeah.
will just slam like 2 or 3 of those in the middle of the night.
I remember like craving Sprite at the end of prep, and I think it was just the texture of
Citrus.
it. I would just
Yeah.
crave that zero sugar, Sprite. I would wake up in the middle of the night and just either that or the not Mountain Dew, because I can't drink that at middle of the night, but the root beers, because root beers are caffeine free. So yeah, and again, your body's weird as crap when you're shredded. Like it's just weird. You just do weird things.
And I actually got that wrong. It was not the vision. This is like a year and a half ago. It wasn't the vision. It was my left eye would twitch like this.
Oh.
And I would not know why that's the case with it.
Mm.
And he's like, well, sometimes carbonation can do that. And
I was
I
gonna say
realized I was drinking
stimulant.
so much carbonation. There was no stimulant. Yeah, it wasn't anything stimulating. I pulled it back and just stopped. Craziest. So if anyone runs into their eye twitching of all random things, you might want to pull back on some carbonation.
Noted. Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was weird.
My fixation used to be, which is actually funny. I cut it cold turkey like a month and a half ago and haven't had it since, is gum. I used to find that I couldn't just chew one piece of gum. It was like the moment I would chew a piece of gum, I would already be thinking about the next piece. And so that's why like a month and a half ago, I was like, all right, I'm just going to stop buying it, see what happens. And it was really hard the first couple of weeks, but I don't think I've had a piece in like a month and a half. So
You pick up these little ticks and prep, these little coping mechanisms, and yeah, like you don't even realize before you had a whole pack of gum before noon. Yeah. So I think, yeah.
honestly, I just got tired of buying it all the time. And I was like, all right, I just need to stop this. And yeah, haven't looked back.
All right, who's up? Who's got the next one?
Evan, do you have one? Wait, I think, yeah, that's yours.
Let's see here. Here's a good one. Is it better to pre-exhaust a muscle before you start training it? Or what are the benefits of pre-exhausting a muscle before you start training?
Well, I'll let you tackle this one because you probably do this a little bit.
Yeah, it depends on the movement. I think it can help with if you struggle with mind-muscle connection. So like if you struggle activating your chest, I think doing flies can really help. Like for guys out there, doing some cable flies before you actually go do your pressing movements, not necessarily pre-exhausting to where like you can't do any of the movement with it, but it's actually stimulating that muscle first so you can feel it going into it. One thing that John Meadows said years ago, and I've always done this since for programming, is with legs, it's starting off with leg curls, either lying or seated leg curls before you do any actual quad work or glute work or anything like that, because it actually reduces the injury so much throughout your entire workout. According to the data, supposedly with it. And it makes sense because if you're pre-exhausted on that part of your muscle, then you're not going to be able to use it as much going into your other lifts. So that's something that he said, and it makes a lot of sense, and it's something that I've implemented, and it's something that I try to put in most of my programming. So I think there is a benefit to pre-exhausting, at least getting that mind-muscle connection fired up before you start training.
What about you,
especially
Lexie?
if it's something too that you want to go heavier on, that you could risk injury, then pre-exhaustion is absolutely something to consider.
Yeah, I like to start all of my training, especially glute training, because I find that I think most females are this way. If you don't warm up like your hip flexors, or you don't, pre-exhaust the muscle, it's very easy to just not feel your glutes turn on. Especially like if you're somebody who sits for work, you likely have what they refer to as lower cross syndrome. So your hip flexors are really, really tight, and then your glutes they're really lengthened and weaker and harder to turn on. So like for me in particular, I train later in the day after I've been sitting for a while. So I usually always start with some mobility routine. And then I do like to pre-exhaust the muscle that I'm going to be working with just very lightweight. And then before I go into my actual workout, and then I just find that my muscle that I'm trying to activate fires a lot more efficiently that way.
Yeah, one thing I've been doing, you know, this at this point in my lifting career is I like doing the bigger unsafe movements last because I'm already good and loose, right? Like, so basically, like, I'll actually, like, you know, the hack squat would be like, let's say a primary compound movement that I would want to get cranked up on, throw the plates on, right? Like, so basically first big movement of the day. I'm doing it last now. So while I can't put 4 plates on there when I've done extensions, curls, you know, hyper extensions, you know, lunges, things like that, I'm also really just focusing on the reps and enjoying it, and I'm keeping the weight lighter, so I'm just not noticing as much wear and tear on my joints.
Yep.
And I feel like I'm getting a good response from the size, right? So I think some of that comes down to ego. You know, you're always going to be strongest on the first or second lift of the day. Like, so
Mhm.
whatever your ego is telling you want to be good at, you want to do that first. But I used to call it working out in reverse because we all, you know, at one point did the big compounds and then you go down to the isolation. So you start with the big bench press and incline, and then you end with like flies, right? Or a fly machine or something like that. Do it in reverse where you're getting all those things warmed up. You're going to use less weight on those compound movements, but you're going to feel them.
Mhm.
And maybe less wear and tear on the joint. So yeah, I think it's a great strategy, especially depending if you're injured at the end of prep, you know, where you're maybe a little more injury prone, or you just want to get rid of that ego. You know, if it's starting to bug you that the weights are dropping at the end of prep, we'll switch it up so you're not so focused on, man, last week I got 8 reps with 110. This week I only got 9. Well, do it last and get 20 reps with 90 pounds instead of, you know, type of thing.
That's a really good point, Paul. And that's something that I had started doing in my back training as well, is putting rack deadlifts at the end of the workout. You can't go as heavy, but they still do the job you need to do. The weight is not going to be as heavy, so it takes a strain off your back. And that's absolutely a good point. Working out reverse. I like putting it that way too.
Yeah.
I like that.
All right, Lexi, it's like eating breakfast for dinner, working out in reverse.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great analogy. Okay, so this person asks, how detrimental is it if you are eating your meals too close together?
Me? Oh, I'll answer this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go first.
Well, I guess depends on how close together you're talking, but I think it's incredibly detrimental to eat meals close together. Because I'm a big
Yeah.
believer in insulin sensitivity and making sure your insulin gets back to baseline before you eat again in a prep situation. And if you eat your meals too close together, especially if it's a bigger meal, then the way the insulin's going to work is it's going to spike when you eat, then it's going to start falling, and it's not going to get back to baseline again. And then you're going to eat again, it's going to go right back up again. It's going to be constantly elevated. And there's points that can be beneficial, right? Like around your training, that can be beneficial for that. But that's why they say, you know, directly after training, it's okay to have like a meal and then go eat like an hour later, right? Because you want your insulin to be spiked up at that time. But the rest of the day, I think spreading your meals out is beneficial. And again, and I've tested this on myself with testing my blood sugar between meals and during peaking, and making sure before I ate my next meal and knowing how big to make my next meal, I would be all dependent on kind of where my blood sugar sat at that point. So I've tested all this stuff on myself to kind of see how it works. And obviously everyone is different. I'm not saying you need to test your blood sugar after every single meal. I'm not saying that by any means, but I every once in a while, sure, it's not a big deal, but I wouldn't make a habit of it. If you're in a
Yeah,
diet
I
phase.
agree. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that it can be very detrimental from a digestion standpoint, especially if you are in prep. The leaner you get, just naturally, usually your digestion is going to get a little bit more sensitive. So, you know, okay, once in a while, if it happens because the day gets away from you and whatever, like you have to have 2 meals really close together, it's fine. But I see a big issue being a lot of people. I think a lot of people naturally do this, where, you know, they'll be really, really busy throughout the day. Work distracts them. They won't eat a lot. And then boom, they come home and they have all this food left for the day. So it's almost like you're just stacking meals on top of each other at the end of the day. And then, you know, you wonder why you can't drop weight. And it's because you're going to bed with all that food in your system. Your digestion is in overdrive. And then you wake up, you still kind of are digesting that food, your weight's up, you're frustrated. So I see there being a pretty big detriment just from a digestion standpoint alone. So, you know, I would say what's always going to be most optimal is spacing out your food pretty evenly throughout the day. Even if, you know, if you prefer to eat more at night, like that's okay. But don't save all of your food or like 70% of your food for a 3-hour period at night.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of if you could break your meals down pretty evenly throughout the day, as far as a macro profile is concerned. Unless your food is really, really low and you have to stack it around your training window, I think spreading your food out equally throughout the day has massive benefits to your digestion, massive benefits to consistency, massive benefits to your insulin sensitivity, and not to mention the fact that your scale weight in the morning will be very, very accurate, especially if your fluids are at all consistent, be very accurate about what the actual body weight is. And you can actually track that.
So the two problems I have with shorter meal timings are, one, the protein absorption refractory period, it's about 4 to 5 hours. So if you're just doing like 20 grams of protein every 2 hours, you're not actually spiking muscle protein synthesis because you're not getting enough protein per sitting. You're also not giving the body time to recover. The second, and the real reason, because that wouldn't matter to me if it wasn't this reason, eating every 2.5 hours, you start to become like you are just so stuck in this pattern of, as soon as you eat, you got to worry about that next meal, right? And I know some people say, well, like, yeah, but if you're hardcore, you take it serious. But none of us are going to revolve our entire day around 6 meals. Like, some people will, but if you can get the same benefit out of 4 and actually have larger meals, some of my competitors will come to me and be like, yeah, I like eating every 2.5 hours because I get hungry. And I go, well, the reason you get hungry is because you eat every 2.5 hours. If you eat every 4 or 5 hours, your body will get used to that. Our hunger signals are most closely associated with our eating patterns, right? So if you have a consistent eating pattern, if you eat at 7, at 11, at 3, and at 7, that's when you're going to get hungry. If you eat at 7, at 9, at 11, at 1, at 3, right? You're going to get, your body's literally just going to be, plus those meals are so small, you're going to be burning through them. There used to be this adage like, more meals spikes the metabolism. We know that's false. They've literally done the difference between 1 meal a day and 17 meals a day on the same calories. 0 difference in metabolism. Probably some difference in digestion if you're eating 1 meal versus 17, but metabolically, it's not a benefit. So I think that's where that comes from. And I've actually heard some coaches say that, like, yeah, as soon as I start prep, it ramps my metabolism up to eat these small meals. And I'm like, no, you're just hungry because you were eating 2,000 calories in a meal. Now you're eating 400.
Mm-hmm. And that's where
Right.
finding out how many meals a day you actually need is helpful. Look, the 6 meals a day you don't have to eat 6 meals a day. I think 4 is kind of the baseline of where you want to go. I wouldn't go much less than 4. But if you can get your meals in 4 meals and your digestion is good, it's totally fine to do that. And I think when your meals get a little bit smaller, then some people like to do 4 bigger meals, but then some people like it 5 or 6 when the food gets smaller, so they can eat a little more consistently. So at least it makes them feel like they got something to look forward to with it. But is there any difference at that? I don't know. I mean, only whatever makes you happy. It makes you feel
Yeah,
good.
I think I see it with clients too. A lot of times I usually use the range, okay, split your food up between 4 to 6 times per day, depending on your lifestyle, because I think a lot of it has to do too with your job. Like if I have a nurse who's on her feet for a 12-hour shift, she's probably not going to want to eat 6 times a day, right? She's probably going to want to eat 4 times a day. Whereas, you have somebody who works from home, they may want to eat 6 times a day. So I think your lifestyle and like your job plays a big role in like the frequency of how much or how frequently you eat throughout the day.
And stress is the biggest killer of everything in life. So if you stress about getting your meals in, just get them to 4 meals, guys. It's not the end of the world. It's really not. And if you go 6 hours without eating, it's not like your muscle's going to get up and run away from you. Okay. It's not going to happen. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. And I think that's a very freeing feeling, like, especially as someone, when I grew up, I was so worried about my gains and losing my muscle and just, and the hierarchy of it, what's most important, how many calories and how much protein you get per day. Everything else is secondary to that. So if your meal timing is perfect, but you're not eating enough calories, not getting enough protein, then it's not going to matter, right? So focus on that first goal, then break it down into your lifestyle. Like we all have to live our life. You can plan ahead as much as possible, but like you said, shift work, those kind of things. Sometimes all they have a chance to do is literally just chug a shake and move on. So they're going to have some times where they have to focus on, having larger meals throughout the day. I wish every competitor could prep in a bubble where they don't have to go to work. They don't have kids. Their entire day revolves around their prep. Like, but how many people can do that, right? So, and honestly, the prep isn't dependent on that to be successful at all.
No,
So
it's way more dependent on actually hitting your meals and not cheating. Now, look, the
Okay.
closer it gets to the show, like Paul, you talk about the funnel, right? Like the closer it gets to the show, the more important it becomes making sure you get your meals at least on a decent timing basis, because it makes everything more predictable. And predictability is important. If you're in shape, I'm going to press this, if you're in shape and peaking actually is going to do something to help your physique, then being consistent in that data is going to be extremely helpful.
Okay. So we've got about 15 minutes left, right, Lexi? So you said you got to be off.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I have a really good question to end on. It's kind of like a philosophical one. So I think, do you guys have any like short ones? Like,
Let's see.
why is Paul so handsome? We can answer that one real easy because I have, great genetics.
Well, I did get one like really quick one. I guess I can just answer. Somebody asked, do you wish bikini competitors could pick their walkout songs / create routines to their song? And honestly, I would say no, because I cannot tell you one time I've been on stage and I've remembered what's been playing overhead. Like, I feel like, I don't know if it's just me, but I just kind of zone out. So I would say no. I mean, if I wanted to do a routine, I would do something like fitness, but if I wanted a routine to music, but I don't ever pay attention to the music that's going on stage when I'm on stage. So I would say no.
Sometimes it works out. Sometimes, I've been at a show and I'm like, oh, this song really is fitting for this person. I remember Daraja coming out when she won her pro debut at Hurricane, and the DJ played a song called Hey Mr. DJ or something about DJ, and that's what we call Daraja's DJ, so I was like, oh, this is perfect.
Yeah.
And then last week at the Clash, Brittany Hamilton walked on stage and they put on Britney Spears. And I walked backstage because the DJ at Salt Lake was Freddie Naidoo. And I was like, dude, you got so lucky you timed that. He goes, no, I planned that. I had that queued up for Brittany Hamilton to, it was a Britney Spears song. And I'm like, oh, so I think it would be cool maybe at like some shows, because like think about Laura Lee coming out at the Arnold. Like her routine was so choreographed. It was still brief, but it had a few moments of drama. And it would be cool if they could maybe at the top, the Arnold where there's 10 girls, 12 girls, right? It's not like, but I think it could also become problematic because, something doesn't work. The wrong song comes on, the girl's thrown off her game. I could say both sides of that, but I think it would be cool at certain shows if the DJ was up for it to be like, hey, what are you in the mood for? You want some AC/DC or you want some Snoop?
Right. I honestly feel like a lot of the shows I've been to recently, I feel like there's always a really good DJ because they're just usually playing a very great variety of songs. It's always like, I'm just always sitting there like wanting to kind of bop and dance. Like they usually have a
We're
good
lucky
variety
in
of
Florida,
songs.
Lexi. We've got DJ Nelson. He does all the Florida shows. Texas
Okay.
has Freddie Naidoo. Freddie was actually the DJ for the Olympia. So he's a man
Oh,
of
I
many
didn't
talents.
realize it's the actual
Yeah,
DJ.
he was at the
I
Arnold
know
too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm thinking the Arnold. Sorry. We were sitting right next to him at the Arnold.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think when it comes to bikini, I think it'd be cool if you wanted a song, but it's not like classic physique posing. You don't have like a routine, right? To where you do it to the music necessarily. And there's only so many poses you can do in bikini. So I think being able to pick a song that maybe fits you could be cool. But it's also too, it's one of those things that, a lot of the times they speed up the show by abbreviating those routines as well.
Yeah.
And that would be a difficult part of it.
Yeah. Even men's physique would be cool. Like, because just the music can change the energy of the room. But then if the competitor has the choice, you knows what they're going to pick. They might put on, it's corn.
And the routines are so short too. Like, you're talking like the routines are like 45 seconds long. So that would be a constant switching over to someone else's song. There wouldn't be a lot of flow to it.
Yeah. You'd have to have an actual good DJ like Freddie to do that. And I'm sure DJ Nelson could do it.
I feel like personally it would make shows a lot longer too, just because the DJ having to like, all right, what song? Oh, gotta change the song. So I think it would just draw out.
I think so. I think with the electronic stuff now, the DJs can they can queue it up from YouTube. They can get it off iTunes. They can get the songs quickly. The last time I did a show when I did classic, the guy's like, you didn't turn in your music. He's like, what do you want? And I was like, just play something by AC/DC. I know every song. I know every beat.
Oh, you didn't say Matchbox?
I
No, that's
nothing
not
about
Steve from
Nickelback, Paul.
Nickelback. This
I
is
wish.
how you remind me. No.
What's your
No.
philosophical question?
Okay. The best way to support your spouse through the ups and downs of prep. Lexi,
I
you
think it would
seem
be well. I was just thinking.
Be a
I
doormat.
personally be a doormat. I think it comes down. You have to
well,
really
let's
know the
let's open it up to like how to support your friend or spouse.
Well, that's yeah. So that's why I was gonna say. I think it really depends on the person and what they would want because, like, I'm just thinking. I don't. Whenever I'm in prep, I don't want people to like. I don't want to be treated like I'm like special. Like I don't want everybody else's life to just revolve around me because I'm in prep, right? And that's just me. Like I don't like to always be that center of attention. So I just kind of want people to treat me normally. Give me pep talks maybe when I need them, and validate my feelings, when I'm having a mental breakdown. But I don't think I'd want somebody to be like walking on eggshells around me at all points in time because I feel like that could be hard too. Because I don't know, I would just want to be treated like a normal person, essentially.
I think a few things you can do to help if someone has triggers to certain foods and you're living as your significant other, then maybe not keep those around. I think could be helpful with that. I think if someone does have a bad day, be there with them through that bad day. And then when they start to feel a little bit better, remind them this is a choice that they're doing and that you're here to help them and you're not their enemy. I think that's beneficial. Don't do it in the moment when they're upset, though. It's not going to end well. Just wait until the time is right and tell them again and say, hey, I am here to help you. I'm here to support you. I'm not against you here. Like I will listen to you, but when things get rough, I'm also not a punching bag for you. Because a lot of times it can turn into that. And especially for newer competitors. That's a thing I run into
Yeah.
with a lot of newer competitors.
So me and Misty did one prep together, and I think the greatest benefit, now we didn't have kids at the time, we just had a dog, and life was, a lot different. But the one thing that I remember just being grateful for was like sometimes I'd come home and she'd have cooked like 10 sweet
Yeah.
potatoes and a bunch of chicken, and it was already in the Tupperware. So like I was thinking I gotta go home and prep all this food. It was already done. So little things like that, maybe helping out with the laundry every now and then, because the one thing about prep is sometimes I'm taking 2 showers a day, 3 showers a day between the gym and the cardio, and like in Florida it's hot. So I just noticed like little things like the laundry will pile up. So sometimes I'm like super grateful that I don't have to, that can be helpful. But I agree with what Lexi said, like, trying to figure out a way that makes, for me, I'm trying to prep and not impact the people around me at all.
Mhm.
My wife will, because I typically am going to eat dinner with my family. I'm going to eat my first 3 meals on my own, prepped foods. I'm going to eat dinner with my family and prep. That's a non-negotiable for me. And so Misty will make meals that I can macro hack. She's not going to make like casserole dishes that are just loaded with ingredients that I can't figure out. She'll make like single ingredient dinners, pasta and stuff like that, so I can just weigh it out and eat it, and I'm staying right on track, no stress, and no one's bothered. I also started getting up earlier. I just noticed like I get up at 5, I do some cardio, I work, I come downstairs when the kids get up. They don't even know I've been up and done cardio. So it's not like they're like, oh, dad's got to do cardio, so I agree, Lexi. Finding ways to like make prep fit your life and not expecting everyone around you to put it on hold, but just being thoughtful. Just like you said, Evan, don't
Be
keep
thoughtful.
carrot cake in the house while I'm in prep, because I just want
Um, I think that like small gestures too that go a long ways. Like you mentioned, Paul, like okay, the prepping of the food, or maybe if somebody likes like they really like energy drinks, maybe surprise them with an energy drink or surprise them with like a coffee or something. I think those little things can be nice gestures. But and also like if you are a competitor and your significant other is bringing in a lot of that food into the house, like carrot cake, chips, or whatever, also remind like you have to take the initiative. If that really bothers you, they may have no idea that it bothers you, so don't be afraid to communicate that with them if that really does bother you, because if you don't say anything and then you just assume that they're like trying to self-sabotage you, that may not be the case. So like be open to that communication. If they're really bringing something in the house that's bothering you, have that conversation with them.
Yeah. And to just be helpful, ask, hey, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? Because some people want to make their own food, right? Some people have their way they want to do it. But hey, how can I help you?
Some
Just
people
ask.
literally, I know some people that literally like have anxiety and prep with if anybody else like makes their own food. They're like they feel like they're gonna be self-sabotage. Like I know personally, I'm afraid to I know not everybody listening has a Wawa, but Wawa has that really nifty like soft drink machine
Yep.
with
I don't
all
trust
these
it.
like 0 calorie
I
diet
don't trust it.
sodas. I don't either. In prep, I will not go to that machine because I fear that I'm gonna get the real deal. And I don't know. Everybody's probably like, oh, well, you would taste the difference, but I don't know. I don't trust
No.
myself to taste the difference.
I won't go get any coffee out of like the flavored coffees or anything. And like, especially with the sodas and stuff. Look, they got probably not the brightest bulbs back there switching out those bags. All it takes is hooking up a wrong bag. So no, I'm the same way. I won't touch it.
I'll never forget. I have a client, and she made me listening to this. She told me a story of her. She worked at Sonic in high school. I think it was high school, and she told me that she gave people like the full
Mhm.
sugar soda before when they'd ask for diet, not on purpose, but she would just forget and be like, oh, whatever. So if she's listening to this, she's probably laughing. But that's like where my mind always goes. So and same with the coffee. If I go to Starbucks and get like sugar-free vanilla, I will make sure I stand like right by the counter and see them pumping that sugar-free vanilla. Like, yeah, yep.
I don't trust people on that. No. I'm the same way, Lexi. We're both
What
psychos
was
together.
what was your Starbucks name, Evan? I forget now.
Oh, Aiden.
Aiden.
Aiden and Siri.
Yeah. And
All right,
Bernie.
so I think we all have kind of a weekend off this week, right? There's no shows that we're going to.
Nope, not this
Yeah.
weekend.
I am going to Nashville for 16 hours, but that's not for a show. That's for my sister's graduation. So,
Oh, congratulations. What's she graduating from?
she's graduating from Lipscomb University, and she doesn't know I'm coming, so I'm gonna like surprise her. But this will be out on Monday, so yeah. So I'm just going.
Let's get this podcast out today, Lexi.
Oh yeah, because I'm sure she listens to it. Yeah, but yep, that's where I'm going. And then the next weekend we'll be in Pittsburgh.
And
Yeah,
then New York.
Pittsburgh. I mean, I really can't wait for that list to come out because next Tuesday on our podcast, we're gonna have a lot. It might just be a Pittsburgh Pro preview because it's gonna be big names. I've heard some names coming into the show that I was like, oh, I didn't know. Okay, so yeah, I think it's gonna be really fun to just see that list come out. It's gonna be first call out at that show might be half of the first call at the Olympia.
Yeah,
It's going to be
it's
good.
gonna be exciting.
You know, I
Then
know
we got New York
Laura
Pro
and
the week after
Jennifer
that, which will be
Dory aren't
huge.
going there, but that's about the only ones that aren't right, currently going there.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see if Amy is at the Pittsburgh Pro because
100%. She's
absolutely
definitely
gonna do
going.
it. Yeah.
yeah, that's why I really wish Ashley Kay would do it because I would love to see those two like just compared. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I think Amy's also said she's doing New York, and Ashley is interested in New York. I think she'll be at one, Ashley. I don't know if she'll be at both, but we'll see. I mean, that's the fun part.
Those are tough to do back to back.
Yeah,
Well, the
that's
nice
a
thing
lot
is Pro Bikini's on Friday in Pittsburgh and Saturday, so you get an extra day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you get the judges that are at New York Pro at Pittsburgh Pro. So you can get that, you saw Ryan Terry last year, Mrs. Peak, come back at New York and win, so, but I don't think Corey was there. He lost to Corey Morris in Pittsburgh and then
In Pittsburgh.
won the New York, but I don't think Corey did both. I think he just did the one.
And then 2 years ago, Sadiq won men's physique in Pittsburgh and then got third at
He
New
got
York.
third.
He was
behind
just going to do New York. He jumped in last minute to Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
which is how he ended up winning his Olympic.
And can we talk about Sadiq? The dude is stacked right now.
yeah, he's looking really good. I talked to him the other day.
Yeah. So, well, Evan and I may be going to see Sadiq up in Syosset the 2 days out. So that'd be fun.
He's ready for us.
Yeah. Well, he's not competing in that show. He's not competing till later.
No.
In the summer, so,
Yeah, I know what show he's doing, but I don't think he's announced it yet.
He announced how many weeks out he was, and if you really care, you can figure it out real quick.
Yeah, you can. It's not a.
I think he said it on the YouTube videos. I was watching the YouTube videos, and I think he said Tampa, but I could be wrong. But yeah.
Do you guys remember when the New York Pro was at the Marriott Waterfront in Tampa? Do you
Oh, I
remember
had
that?
three
You were-
girls.
Yeah.
I had
That's
I
that's the
had
one Nick won.
I had Alexis, who had turned pro the week before she won the overall at Junior USA's, make her pro debut at New York. Natalie Matthews was there. We had a couple girls there, and Etela won. Remember Etela?
Yep.
Yeah,
That's the one that show, and I remember that show
Yeah, that
very,
was-
very well.
yeah.
Very, very well.
Yeah, but they did
Yeah.
not. Well, that's the only time I've been to the New York Pro, because it's always the same weekend as Junior USA's. This will be my first time ever going to the New York Pro.
It's it's universe universe 1.0.
Yeah, but take away the 8,000 competitors because there's no NPC there.
Yes.
So yeah,
Take away the 8,000 competitors and throw in 8,000 bodybuilders.
yeah, and it's got open bodybuilding, and that open bodybuilding lineup right now is looking nasty, dude.
Sick. Oh
There's
man, it's
some-
gonna be so much fun. I cannot
Yeah.
wait for that.
Yep. All right,
I mean,
guys. I think that's it. Lexi, you got to get going. We've got a lot to unpack next week for the podcast. So thank you guys for sending all the great questions. Make sure you leave a comment, review, comment below on YouTube if you're on here. We'd love to hear questions, and we'll address them. And we'd love to hear thoughts and ideas on topics you want to hear from. So
Absolutely.
from all of us
We
here
love
at Pro
that.
Physique, good night and good luck.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.